We are live. Oh, I am so excited. I am Colette Courtion, CEO and founder of Joylux, and I'm joined by Kate Roberts, the extraordinary CEO and entrepreneur of the Body Agency, who has a mission to totally inform, educate, and empower women all over the world on their bodies and sexual health and women's health. And I'm just so delighted to be spending the next hour with Kate talking everything about women and health. So, Kate, welcome.
Thank you, Colette. It's so good to be here. I was just saying the only thing missing is a glass of wine in my hand.
I know, what is up with that? We forgot our wine.
It's 7 o'clock on a Thursday here.
Exactly. It's 4 o'clock here in Seattle, but it's definitely what we consider happy hours. So if you're at home and you're watching us, please grab a glass of wine for us. It certainly makes the conversation so much more fun. So, Kate, I would love it if we started our talk by telling everybody how you got started and how you founded the Body Agency.
Sure. Well, that is a good question. I've spent the last 25 years of my life really advocating for girls' and women's health around the world. And I've been so lucky to have traveled to about 120 countries around the world. And wherever I go, whoever I meet with, lots of women, children, families, it doesn't matter what economic situation we're sitting in, our bodies operate in the same way. And
Absolutely.
it doesn't matter whether you live on $1 a day or $1,000 a day. We all have the same parts, and we all have the same challenges and opportunities around our bodies of seeking out the right healthcare and what works for us. So my journey really started off working in the sort of charitable space, and I founded an organization called Maverick Collective with the help of Melinda Gates. She was our co-chair, and the Crown Princess of Norway, and this organization called PSI, which is a global health organization. And for the last 20 years, I've really been working in that space. And as I say, traveling, meeting women, mostly in marginalized areas. And I really recognized a gap in female health, really starting at puberty, going all the way up to menopause and postmenopause around our sexual wellness. And through those years, I had been looking for various solutions around issues such as cervical cancer, HIV, sexual reproductive health, maternal health, and so on. And through that journey, I just saw that there was a big gap in what we now call femtech and femcare.
Mm-hmm.
And when we look, you and I partner around the menopause space, but when you just look at that area, when I say I worked in this space for 25 years, I never once heard the word menopause because it just wasn't considered a health issue or something that needed attention and resources. And so, that's really when the idea of the Body Agency came along. And I just feel like it's a national health crisis in a way, that women don't have the right type of access to the health products and services they need to thrive.
And education, which is a big proponent of what both you and I are doing, is educating our consumers, our customers on everything related to their body and to what stage of health, because you cover more than just menopause. You and I are working on some things together in the menopause, but you actually go from period, menstruation, all the way up to menopause.
Yeah, I really decided that I wanted to be a platform that starts with puberty and periods. For instance, on my travels, we had a through Maverick, we had a project on periods and reducing the taboo and all the stigma that there exists around the world about purely the fact that we bleed every month, right?
Yeah.
You would think that at this point in the stage of the game that there wouldn't be any stigma around that. We all bleed. And so I had a project in Nepal, and from the research that I saw in Nepal, I understood that there was a cultural practice that locked girls up in the cowshed when they were having their periods, and just you were considered dirty, and you are considered dirty, and that's not just in Nepal, right? That's in many countries. So for me, it was important to really remove any form of stigma around periods and give parents the tools to be able to talk to their tweens and teens about what's about to happen to them through puberty, and then really stay with the girl and then the woman and fertility and contraception until if she chooses to have children, and then of course perimenopause and menopause, and then postmenopause. Like, we don't die when we go through menopause.
In fact, some of us thrive. This is some of the best years of my life.
I know. I was actually just having that conversation that, it shouldn't be, those words like the change and curse and things like that. I'm like, no. It gets really good.
Yeah.
So I also wanted to have a space that's scientifically backed. We have a body board of doctors and experts and sexologists and gynecologists. And I wanted to talk about this in a medical way and get medically accurate scientific information out there to our customers, and then find products like Joylux products that we really believe in, and be a platform for women of all stages of life to get the best products, services, and educational materials that are scientific.
That's incredible. So before I want to dive into what it's like being an entrepreneur in femtech, I want to hear a little more about your experiences and your background, because I remember talking to you and you shared a story about you were at Davos and you were on stage talking among all these men primarily, and you said the word vagina. Am I reading? Is this?
Yeah, you've got it. You've got it a little bit. It was actually I was on a panel at Davos, and
by the way, it's so incredible, right? Because the brightest minds go to Davos, and so it's so incredible that you were there and speaking.
Well, I have to be honest, Colette, I was so humbled because I got this opportunity through this group called the Young Global Leaders, and the World Economic Forum chooses young leaders doing things to improve the state of the world. And I was amongst one of those chosen. And so it gave me this incredible opportunity. I mean, it was like the golden buzzer to go and advocate. And, I felt so passionately about women's health and what we need to thrive. And the fact that at the time, I think there was only 6 or 8% of women participation at Davos. And the Young Global Leaders actually did change that, because we are literally a 50-50 group of men and women. Anyway, long story short, I get invited onto this panel and I'm like, oh, this is my golden opportunity. And I started to talk about contraception.
Yes.
And this is in 2017. No, sorry. 2007, not 2017.
Oh my goodness! Back then, we definitely didn't talk about it back then.
Sorry, 2007. Which I'm sorry, but it's not that long ago.
But it is. I mean, so much has changed between then and now. I mean,
it has, and I have to say, I have to give kudos to the World Economic Forum, because they've really, really stepped it up. And I just whipped out the vulva puppet at one of our sessions, our Young Global Leader sessions, and all the Young Global Leaders were like, this is incredible. Wow. Everyone was talking about it. But at the time, I was pulled off the panel and they said, Kate, you cannot talk about contraception in a silo. You can talk about it as a children's issue but you cannot talk about contraception. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. Like, we need to be able to plan our families. 250 million women out there do not have access to contraception.
Right.
And, why make these subjects taboo when it's just a human right to be able to get your hands on birth control and be able to plan your families and look after your body and, choose the kids that you want to have and be economically stable by not having 12 children. You
Exactly.
want them.
So you were an early pioneer in definitely talking about women's health and breaking the taboos. And so talk to us a little about your experiences while launching your company and raising capital and trying to get it off the ground. What was it like for you, especially given the subject matter of
Yeah.
women's health?
Well, I think you and I talked about this. If we get back to Davos for a second, it was Davos 2020, and it was the last live conference that I went to before COVID happened to us all. And I remember walking down the main street, which they set up lots of different huts and things with different promotional things, and you've got LG and you've got the banks and you've got whatnot, and it's all very conservative. And this year I walked down Main Street and I see a cannabis hut on Main Street, and I could smell the aroma like coming out. And I just thought to myself, you know what? If there's now cannabis at the World Economic Forum, there can be sexual wellness for women.
Don't you think it's about time?
It's about time. And why are we not talking about it? It's a human right. And so that night I went to a reception at Davos, and it was a bank reception, I think JP Morgan, one of the big banks. And I started to talk about my idea with a lot of the bankers. And, at a certain stage, I had a crowd of people around me, all investors, saying, well, this is such a good idea, Kate, especially if you can monetize it. And that gave me the confidence to come home to say, you know what, I can do this. However controversial all of this is, I can do this, and I can use my platform and whatever power I have to lean on the people that I've built through my charitable endeavors over the years to really help me to do that. So very quickly, I was very lucky to be able to raise the money through my circles of who I knew to be advocates in this area to start the company. And money is the hardest money to get, and as we know, only 5% of women founders get funded. So
I think it's less than that. I think it's 3%. It's so low. It's
ridiculous. Yeah. And I knew all of that going in, and I just thought, we really have to break these taboos, and we have to work with the private sector, technology, and others as a collective to be able to really break through that sexual wellness glass ceiling.
Yes.
And I started to connect with people like you and others in the femtech world, where I realized there were all these incredible female pioneers out there who, had thought about what kind of products that we really truly need. And, I was really exploring my own sexuality, and my body was changing. And I was starting to sort of say to myself, well, where do I go to get information about perimenopause? I don't know, I don't know anything about this. And I just thought, this is not easy. I have to make it easier for not just America, but the world to engage in this way, whether you live in Mumbai or Memphis.
That's what I love about it, is your global view on this. You have this, it's not just about what's happening in the United States. It's about how can we change sexual well-being, sexual health, women's health across the world. And in fact, some of your products, and I don't mean to jump right into this part of the section, but some of your products do come from around the world, which is amazing, because you curate the best of the products from different countries. And in fact, that puppet you showed earlier, can you show that again?
Oh yeah,
this is fascinating. Tell us about this puppet, because this is a really beautiful story.
So on my travels, I have traveled a lot, especially through Southeast Asia. And we found a group of artisan women who are disabled, and they formed a social enterprise where they're making, bags and pouches and out of this beautiful organic cotton. And a lot of the women have lost the use of their hands, so they use their feet to make the material. And so we approached them with this prototype to see if they could make the puppet. And the whole idea of the body agency really is to make enough money so that we can give back to these groups and fund these social enterprises of artisans that creates financial inclusion, employment for them, but also goes on to teach girls in those regions about sexual reproductive health and how their bodies operate. So it was like a double win-win whammy bammy for us.
Wow.
And they then have hand stitched all our tote bags and our pouches, and we're looking at all different other groups like these to bring these products, educational, sex ed products like that, to take back, or at least recreate now, sex education across the world, because it's almost non-existent.
So speaking of education, Kate, so you actually held up the puppet, but you didn't tell us what it is. And there actually may be people that don't know what that is. So let's educate. What is the puppet?
Oh, yeah. I love talking about this stuff. Well, we also have the coaster that also shows what this is. This is a vulva, and it shows all the different parts of your vulva and your vagina. This is a clitoris, this is the hood, and this is the vagina. And the whole thing is called a vulva.
Yeah, that's right.
And the coaster actually then gives you a map of everything that you need to know of where everything is. And I am the first to say that this was educational for me.
100%. Hey, when I started this company, Kate, I didn't know what all the pieces were, and I kept referencing, our products as they're for the vagina, when in fact some of the products are technically for the vulva.
It's so true.
It was like it was one and the same. It's the vagina, but actually there are the different body parts and there are the different names. And now I'm finally educated. Let's hope. I've been the CEO of this company now for 7 years. But for so many women and men, and I have a funny story about that. Don't even know what it looks like. They haven't seen theirs. They don't know what the parts are. Why do you think, we as a society, whether it's a woman, whether it's a man, why do you think we're so hesitant to talk openly about the vulva or the clitoris or vagina? What is it about sexual health and menopause and our intimate body parts that makes us so ashamed or nervous to talk about it?
Well, I can only talk about my own experience, but I have a hunch. And my own experience definitely comes from my mother. My mother being Roman Catholic, your parents create that shame in you. Because let me tell you, I have a 10, turning 11-year-old daughter. I chase her around the house with a vulva puppet. I'm like, here it is. And she's like, oh. She will not grow up feeling any form of shame of what goes on down there. And we talk about discharge, and we talk about what it all is and why you have it, and that's where babies come out, and this is what's going to happen. And yes, you are going to see white stuff in your underwear, and don't freak out, you're not dying. I've heard stories of girls who are like, I'm dying. Now, I didn't know what that stuff was. I wasn't educated. Where the shame comes from, hands down, for me, was my Roman Catholic mother putting the fear of God in me. You will get pregnant. You will shame your family. We will disown you. Talking negatively about our body parts. Whereas we believe that if we give parents the right information to talk about this in just a matter of fact, easily to digest way of everything that goes on down there, you're not going to have the shame, and you're not going to have the misinformation. You're just going to grow up with the right facts that are talked about in a normal way. So I believe that the stigma and the shame comes from a number of places. First and foremost, as parents, right?
Yep.
We can change the status quo if we understand how to talk to our kids. And most parents are horrified by the thought that they have to have these conversations with their kids. So we're actually developing a whole load of masterclasses on how to talk to your kids that will be at the Body Agency with gynecologists and parenting coaches and whatnot. Secondly, I believe religion has a huge part in the shame. And then thirdly, culture. If you look at pop culture, if you look at media, but if you also, Netflix had this incredible show about an Orthodox Jewish girl. I think it was called Unorthodox, the show.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah. And, she was shown not being able to have sex, which is vaginismus, which, 50 million women suffer with in the United States alone, where the penis will just not go in. And you and I have talked extensively about this because you have products that help that issue and we love them. And so I think it's cultural, it's parents, and it's religion. And, we have a lot of work to do. Like we're just,
It's interesting because I was with you, Kate. My family, my mother was Christian, but a very hardcore Christian. And I remember growing up, all she would talk to me was stay a virgin, don't ever have sex until you're married. And she very much shamed me about the body and didn't talk to me. What's interesting, though, is I, as a parent, have decided, obviously, I think in part because of the focus of our company and how we're trying so hard to educate women and empower women to take control of their intimate health. But as a parent, I have made the choice of talking to my son, who is young, he's 6 years old, but talking to him about body parts like they're a body part just like everything else.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have to respect, body parts and private parts. But we talk to it in terms of this is a penis, this is a vagina. These are, we don't give funny nicknames. We don't say, you're Willie or Mama's hoo-ha. It's what it is, which could actually make for very interesting public conversations. I was at a Starbucks once and Coleman yelled out something about, "Mommy, my penis has gotten hard." Right in the middle of a Starbucks. Oh gosh.
Well, apparently that happens for a boy. I think it's something like every 12 minutes.
It's a lot.
Boys get erections. And well, I've talked about it.
But I chose to talk to him and I'm like, okay, well, here's why. It's blood flow, and it means, something got it all excited and stimulated. And so I try to be, really as factual as I can with a 6-year-old. But
wow.
But how do we help women and men that have children and kids? How do we, if they had parents like us where they were shamed and they were we were brought up with sex is so taboo or your body is so taboo, what can we do to help people just feel more comfortable about educating or normalizing the conversation with their kids and frankly with among their girlfriends? Like, I feel like we have to talk about it to really help normalize it.
All about communication, and it's also tapping into a pop culture. It is a bit sad that one of the most famous families in the world is the Kardashians, and the reason they got so famous is she did a sex tape. That's what sort of got them out there. But pop culture and tapping into influencers and people who, have a voice out there is really, really important to break the taboos. I mean, look what Amy Schumer, for instance, does. She's a comedian, she's hilarious, and she uses comedy to talk about those things. I just went to see her live before the pandemic and just laughed so hard because she's talked about what's going on in her underwear, right? And of course, it's like you take a sharp intake of breath because it's embarrassing, but she made it hilarious because we all know those things happen to us.
Don't we feel like it's just us? Like, I remember when I was a young girl and I saw that white discharge for the first time, I was like, oh my God, something is wrong with me.
Exactly.
It happens to all of us.
Well, talking of boys with erections, I was recently at this Young Global Leader conference with Katie the Vulva Puppet, and who try getting 80 vulva puppets through customs in Costa Rica. It was a very interesting situation. But anyway, I was talking to the different Young Global Leaders from around the world, and I got talking to one young man who was from India, and there was such a lack of, there was just zero discussion in his family. We were very conservative about anything, about puberty, about anything. And at 14, he started to have wet dreams, which, as we know, are very, very normal for boys and girls. And, he would wake up in the morning with this white stuff in his underwear. And he literally told me a story that he thought he was dying, that he had cancer. He had no idea what was going on. And so he went to his brother and told his brother, and his brother was like, you're going to have to go and talk to our father about this. I can't talk about it. And so he did eventually pluck up enough courage to go and talk to his father. His father took him to the doctors, and they put him on a Ayurveda, which is alternative Indian medicine, which we love, by the way, but not this variety. Which
I hope not for this thing.
Not for this thing, yeah. Because he was, basically the doctor was like, oh, there's something wrong with you, which is so utterly a dangerous thing to do. And they put him on this course of Ayurveda herbs that is basically like, what's the drug that makes you horny?
You mean erectile?
Yes, erectile dysfunction.
Viagra.
So he started, Viagra. So he started taking this Viagra-like Ayurveda, and of course, made it completely worse. But the point is that there's not the right education or the tools right now for people to feel comfortable in those circles. And there's way more people like that than there are about us. We're just a small group of, educated, sex positive activists who believe in this stuff. I also think that incredible role models and doctors like Dr. Jen Lincoln, for instance, who, is young and hip and cool. And she whips out the vulva puppet, and she, she's gone viral on TikTok because literally she did, I think, a tampon demonstration and put it on TikTok, and it went viral. And overnight she got like 1 million followers.
Wow.
So I actually think doctors and medical providers have got a real opportunity as well to change the status quo, and for people like us to develop the right educational materials and help schools get the right sex ed. And I believe that there needs to be 2 different types of sex ed, one for boys and one's for girls. It's all lumped in together right now, and it's inadequate.
Right. So let's shift gears a little, Kate, since Joylux, we're a company that focuses on the menopausal woman, or women, as we say, going through midlife changes. So we have perimenopause, we have postmenopause. What are, this is also something that you talk about. You have some great tools on your website about menopause. What are some things that surprised you, or you didn't know about women's health that after learning about it, and specifically menopause, that you'd like to share with us?
Well, first of all, I think half of the world doesn't realize what perimenopause is.
Yeah.
And I certainly did not know about that. I had heard it always through my life, this negative change that happens to you called menopause. And I associated it with, bitchy women and
old. Like
Old bitchy.
old women, old women.
Yeah. And so I'm like, oh, I'm not looking forward to that. That sounds awful. But then, perimenopause, my friend told me about it. She was my age and she was going through it. And I was like, what's perimenopause? And I had never heard about it. So I think that's the first thing that is not known, that for at least a year, you go through this thing called perimenopause, where your periods become irregular and you start to have some of the symptoms. The other thing that I've learned through, developing all the learning for the body agency around menopause is that you don't, okay, let me put it this way. You don't necessarily have to suffer through it.
Right.
There are really good companies like Joylux and others out there that provide, great lubricant and devices that can help you with vaginal dryness and some of the other symptoms that you get. Sleep is an issue, mood swings. You can get the right hormones, so you don't have to suffer through it. And I think that that's one of the big cultural things that is just rammed down your throat, that this is going to be horrible. You're going to become a different person. No one's going to like you. You'll be old and used up. You won't want to have sex anymore.
Yep.
None of those things are true, I can assure you.
Yeah. I was actually very surprised to learn that perimenopause can actually be over 8 to 10 years.
Yeah.
And you don't experience necessarily all the symptoms. There's many menopausal symptoms. We identify with 34, so 34 specific symptoms that are related to menopause. I think if you ask, someone else, they may say there's 40. At Joylux, we identify 34. And you may or may not experience all of them, but there's also different stages of your life. I remember for me, the first phase of perimenopause for me was hot flashes.
Yeah.
And night sweats. And it didn't last long, but I remember there was about 2 months where I was waking up drenched in sweat, which is basically a hot flash that you have at night. And I didn't understand. I thought at first, am I sick? Because I was young. I was still, I think I was 43 when I had my first night sweat. And I thought of menopause as being, oh, you're 60 and I just for some reason thought of it as much older in life, not in my early 40s. So for me, getting a night sweat was the first thing. And then I kind of grew out of it. It was only a couple months. And then I didn't have anything for a while. And now I'm like, oh, the brain fog and the sleeping hard, having a difficult time sleeping and the weight gain. All of a sudden I overnight gained 15 pounds, and I swear I did nothing to my diet that was different. It just all of a sudden my body was like, we're going to hold on to it. We're not letting go.
Well, it's very, very important. I have these conversations with our body board members all the time, who are doctors and from many different areas of the medical world. And your gut is at the center of everything. Yeah. And again, you don't have to suffer through these symptoms. In fact, I love your cooling breast pads.
Oh yes. Oh, here I've got one right here.
Love those. We
those all in it.
Yeah, get those cooling breast pads. They're fantastic. Not just to get you through menopause. They just feel really good. Like they make you feel fresh and light, and then your sleep stuff, I think, is really, really good. I've even, when I was younger, I've always suffered with sleep, and sleep is so important for our well-being. But the gut is at the center of everything. And I think when you go through perimenopause and menopause, the stress is also an issue, and stress leads to so many different other things. So, diminishing sex drive is, they say, one of the symptoms. And
I disagree with that.
I disagree too.
It's been the opposite. Whoever said it goes down, no. I think my body is saying, like, here's your last hurrah, like, here's one last chance of getting pregnant. you.
Colette,
Horny
it's
as well.
not the last hurrah. A friend of mine is 75 years old, and she's fantastic. I mean, she's long gone through menopause, 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago. She's having the best sex of her life right now with her husband of 30
I
years.
love it.
So let's not go there. I think it's a mindset as well. Like if you get the right information and the right products, you can just soar through it and come out the other end and rock on.
100%. And that's why with our product, VFit, we see so many women that truly they, after using the VFit product, they're able to enjoy sex again, and they feel like they did when they were in their 20s. So yes, it's very possible. So anybody that says it goes down, not necessarily true. And if it does for you, there are tools, there are things to help you improve that.
And I think it's also about communication. Everything comes back to communication, having the tools that you need to be able to communicate with your partner what's going on. And the questions I get all the time from men is men do not understand menopause. They, again, see it as this horrible thing that happens to their partner, and they can't explain it. And we have to be educating both men and women.
Absolutely.
If we're going to change the status quo. And, again, when your hormones change, your skin gets affected. And skin down there gets affected, right? It's not that you are all dried up down there. I've heard horrible things about that. It's your skin is physically changing, and that's why there's dryness down there. Communicating with your partner, let's put some, wonderful lube down there and do it together. And I mean, there's just loads of great things you can do. But I think it's very important that men understand what's going on so they can be supportive. And, we actually put together a menopause kit. I think we're calling it My Hero Gift for Christmas.
I love it.
Where you can get it for your mother or for your partner, and it basically gives you. We've done the research of what we believe to be the best products that have gone in the kit. In fact, some Joylux products are in there, and it's a wonderful gift, a self-care gift to somebody you love who has held up half the sky for you.
Yeah, no, I think what you said, Kate, about communicating with your partner is really critical. Growing up, I remember being in relationships in my 20s and 30s. I didn't communicate what I wanted, when I'm talking about what I wanted intimately, what was important to me. But now that I'm, so, proactive about my intimate health, and so empowered, I certainly speak up, and I certainly say, this is what's important to me. This is how I get pleasure. And it is totally a game changer for my relationship. I mean, again, we go back to I'm having some of the best sex I've ever had in my life. And so just because I'm older, it's really good. So communication is key. And if you are having any issues, then there are tools, there are products that can help you to get your groove back, to feel confident about your intimacy.
Yeah,
that's important.
I was sitting on an airplane at the very beginning of just having the idea about the body agency, and I remember I was flying to the West Coast from the East Coast, and I sat in my seat, and next to me was a young boy. Well, he's not really a boy, a young man, 26 years old probably. And then next to him by the aisle was a more mature lady who was probably maybe coming up to 60, right? And we all sort of get chatting. It's like, what do you do? What do you do? And I was like, oh, I'm a femtech entrepreneur. And they're like, oh, that's so interesting. What's all that about? And I started to give the concept of what we were building. And the young man said, I wish that this had been around when I was a young boy, because I had no idea about a woman's body. I was desperate for the information. You cannot get it anywhere. And if there was just a map, there was just a map, it would have saved me a lot of anguish and, bad sexual experiences. And, he was just really wanting to learn about women. And then the lady sitting in the aisle, she leaned over and she said, please tell me that you are developing tools and products for my age group, because I feel like once you hit, 50 or 60 as a woman, you are completely left behind. And I am desperate to figure out what is going on with my body, and I can't get the information anywhere. So I guess the moral of this story is it doesn't matter what generation you're in or what stage of life that you're in, there is a lack of good educational information and products that work,
Wow.
and then access to them and knowing about them, just knowing about them. And so that's
exactly. So let's actually go back to your company being a femtech entrepreneur, trying to build brand awareness and get people to discover your brand and your website and your products is challenging, especially in a world where we do see things like the vagina and simply even talking about the vagina, or even the word menopause, or some of these words to describe what we are trying to help educate on are considered taboo. We've had our share of advertising on Facebook or Google and literally being shut down because we were deemed pornographic.
Yeah.
Even though we showed a picture of our doctor talking about women's health, but because she said the word vagina, or she's, referenced sexual health, we were deemed pornographic. Have you, Kate, had any issues being a femtech entrepreneur and building awareness for your brand where you're like, what? Come on, people.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And you and I have talked about this. We have really suffered, actually been closed down a couple of times on Instagram. I'm sorry, but my puppy has literally grabbed a Christmas ball from the Christmas tree.
I think I can hear it.
Tossing around, and I know it's disturbing, so I'm just going to grab it. I'll be right back.
That's okay. Yeah, so for those of you that are listening, it seems ridiculous, especially since you're familiar with the Joylux brand, and we're, certainly far from pornographic. We are just trying to promote women's health. And yet Facebook algorithms, Instagram algorithms, they look for keywords, and whether or not they understand the context of the word. If you say that word, you're automatically flagged. And then they shut your ads down, or they shut your page, your page down so that people can't access. So it makes it really tough as a young brand trying to build awareness and promote what we're all about, which is women's health. And so, Kate, tell us a story, or what you've kind of hurdles you've experienced.
Yeah, we were lucky to have good advice from the beginning, and I talked to a lot of other femtech entrepreneurs like you and others like Polly from Unbound, and really heard from them what the challenges were. And I heard that this happens. And so we have been very careful. It's such a shame. The vulva puppet got closed down a number of times. We have a sexual wellness kit, which is basically it's a fantastic device for menopausal women. It heats up and it comes with a great lubricant, and and so that was also a problem. We had to just remove that from the entire company. We couldn't sell that because basically Facebook comes and looks at your whole site and deems things inappropriate, where they're really medical devices, and have full approval, and that they've gone through everything that needs to happen. And so we've had to get really clever and change words in vulva, and add the A instead of so it's not found by bots, but saying the word vagina, just women's parts, right? That we all on, and they're used to birth babies.
Exactly. Well, here we're trying to tell our customers and our tribe of people, say, let's be empowered to talk about this. Let's be open. Then you come to our website and we have to be tricky and change it, say empower the V instead of just saying
massage device. Yeah. But listen, best invention of all time is a vibrator, as far as I'm concerned. And every woman should have one. And
in fact, actually, Kate, this is a statistic I think is pretty remarkable. 68% of women in the United States have had or used a vibrator at least once. And so that's actually a pretty large number. I want it to be 100%, but 68% is a pretty large number.
Well, it is. But if you look at the number worldwide, only 75%, no, wait, 75, I've got to get this right. 75% of women do not have orgasms through penetration.
Yeah.
So that means this part right here, which is the clitoris, to remind everyone, the only reason for this body part right here is pleasure. That's it. It doesn't have any other function whatsoever. That means that if that is not stimulated, you are not going to have pleasure, or at least an orgasm, a climax during sex. And so a vibrator really helps and can really improve your intimacy and your pleasure with your partner.
In fact, there was an article that just came out, I think it was 2 months ago, about the G-spot and how for many years we all thought the G-spot is why we have experienced orgasms through penetrative sex, when in fact there is no such thing as the G-spot. And we have to stop talking about the G-spot, because you are not getting an orgasm through penetrative sex. You are getting it through clitoral stimulation. In fact, this is interesting. The same nerves that is responsible for the penis is where the clitoris is on a woman. And in fact, that's the location. So if we women grew a penis, we would grow it out of our clitoris.
Yeah.
And so that's why we have orgasms, is through stimulation. Now, there is some discussion around the nerves that come from the clitoris, that they may extend into the vaginal wall, and that there could be some stimulation that occurs through penetrative sex, but it's really about stimulating the clitoris. And so I think it was Cosmo that, for, as long as we've known Cosmo, the magazine, they talk about, all the great ways to orgasm. I think they finally came out and said, we will no longer talk about the G-spot because it does not exist. It is a myth. It's not real.
Well, if you look at the body parts, again, the biology of how we are made up and how our men are made up, we are the same. Ours is just you can't see it. It's internal. Right. If you actually look at our pelvic area, it's the same, just internal. And again, a man gets excited from stimulating on the outside, and we have to around the clitoris. But I do have a very interesting story for you about the history of the vibrator and why it actually was invented.
I love it. I love it. There's a movie about this. Did you see the movie?
No.
There is a movie about it, and while you tell the story, I'm going to Google this movie because it's a fantastic movie.
Oh gosh, I would love to see it. No, I was doing a podcast. I have a podcast show, which I've had you on, as you know, Sex, Body and Soul. And I was interviewing Dr. Laurie Mintz, who wrote the book Becoming Clitorate. And she writes all about the history of our orgasms and the history of the vibrator. And basically, in short, the women during the sort of Victorian era were going into the doctor with depression. Mm-hmm. And the doctors were basically using their fingers to masturbate the women. And the news spread that this is basically, if you've got depression, this doctor is going to help you. And he had so many clients that his hands were getting achy. Yeah. And so the first vibrator was invented so the doctor could use this device rather than his hands.
Yes.
So So I just absolutely love that story. And
Well, the movie, it's exactly what you're talking about, and I remember watching it. It's called Hysteria, and it came out in 2011, and it stars Jonathan Pryce and Hugh Dance. Oh no, those are the two doctors. The woman actress is a woman that we all are real familiar with. I gotta think of her. I gotta find her name. But yes, it is exactly that story, Victorian times,
but
and
what is interesting about the whole thing is women. This is when you asked me at the beginning of our chat, where does the shame come from? When women were having orgasms in that time, they were considered hysterical. They were considered crazy. And again, it's so interesting. And I really encourage everyone to read this book, Becoming Cliterate, because it does talk about our evolution as women and the history of orgasms. And again, it came from doctors. The vibrator came from doctors,
yes.
because this is a human right.
And in fact, Kate, the vibrator was considered a medical device in the early days, and it was because it was for a medical condition. This this hysteria. It was Maggie, the actress is Maggie Gyllenhaal. She was fantastic.
I love her. Yeah.
Hugh Dancy, Felicity Jones, Maggie Gyllenhaal, must-watch movie.
Love. And it's called Hysteria?
Hysteria.
Oh my God, I love it. I'm so getting it on Netflix tonight.
Yes, it's really good. It's very entertaining. Okay, so Kate, we're coming towards the end of this, what has been a really fun hour. I love talking to you. You're so fascinating and so brilliant. And of course, any woman that goes into the field of femtech and women's health is a huge, I admire, because we need more of us to elevate the conversation. But I want to spend the last 5 or so minutes talking about what makes you most proud about your company and what you've accomplished over the last year, or it's been about 6 months or a year.
Yeah. Oh, no longer, because it took a while to get it really, developed and off the ground. I'm proud of the fact that we're already changing lives. I have dedicated my life to these issues, and I've sat with women in slum dwellings in India and Africa, where I've sat with a translator and they don't even have a word for orgasm because they just don't even know what it is. And that's always stuck in my mind. And I never thought in a million years that I would have a company that addresses sexual wellness, or a podcast that addresses and has amazing people like you and others and doctors on talking about these issues like it was, would you like a cup of tea?
Yeah.
I just never would have thought that would be the case, because I've always worked for large organizations before, and I've always been muzzled in a way, right? As in there's always been a problem like, no, Kate, you can't say that. And so I love, and I'm so proud of the platform that we've built that supports other brilliant femtech entrepreneurs like yourself and so many other women who are doing extraordinary work against all odds, really. It's
very difficult. So when you say against all odds, it truly is against all odds.
And every day is a fight, and you and I are in that fight, and it's another setback. And I'm just done with men in gray suits telling us what to do. Men in power. Men still run the world, right? There is no shadow of a doubt. Men decide what's going to go on Netflix. Men decide what happens in politics. I'll never forget that photograph of Trump with his merry men signing the Roe v. Wade bill. I will never forget that moment. I will never forget the moment my 5-year-old daughter at the time comes home and says, how come a man who touches girls' parts inappropriately become president of the United States? I will never forget that. And so when you ask me what I'm proud of, I'm proud that my daughter will not have to grow up in that world. I'm determined by the time she's an adult it will be a different place for her to live, where it
Mhm.
comes to her, her body, her protection, her rights, to make the right choices and to have access to the right products, services, and education that she needs to thrive. That's what I'm proud of.
I love that, and you are certainly doing that, and it is an uphill battle still for so many of us, but I do think we are making a difference. Joylux started back in 2014, so we were really one of the early pioneers in the space. But just to see the progress happen over the last 2 years, and to see more people, more women get into the field of femtech is encouraging. It tells me that we are making change happen. And I want to share kind of what you said, Kate, about making a difference in women's lives. I went this summer. I went to go hire our first software developer, and a young kid right out of college. He's being recruited from all the big, tech players, Amazon, Facebook, and I said to him, I said, well, you can go work in these big companies and you can fix one little thing of a wheel of a bigger thing, of a bigger thing, of a bigger thing. And yes, all of this combined is making a difference in people's lives. Or you can come work for us where literally what you are responsible for is changing women's lives. It's
Yeah.
improving their vaginal health. It's
Yep.
giving them confidence to live their life freely, to be active, to engage in intimacy again. So exactly what you're doing, and the app that you are building and the connection to our device, it is game changer for so many women. And
Yep.
he's like, I'm in.
Oh,
And
what a
I
great
love
man.
that. I love that because we are changing so many women's lives and men's lives. They're benefiting from the change in women's lives. And I do hope that our children will grow up and it will be a much different world for them than it was for us.
Yeah. Well, I think you told me this, Colette, that it's that the menopause market alone is a $600 billion market, right? $600 billion. What does that tell us? There's a lot of women out there that go through menopause, right? So,
We all do.
so if you are a funder out there, and this is what I'm very excited about, because yes, femtech has exploded. VCs are looking for great projects like yours and mine to get involved in. I think the money is there. The barriers, I think, are more about politics and religion and culture than they are about money per se, because I do think that funding flow is happening, right? That we're getting
We
funded.
are seeing it, but I will tell you, because I am a little later stage company, is we see it a lot in the early stage, because there's a lot more women investors making bets. They're small bets. We need the big investors that are ready to make the big bets.
Yeah.
And that's where there's a hole. And we're not seeing the VCs who are writing the 10, $20 million checks yet for this category. And there's a couple. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a couple, and that's awesome. But we need a lot more funders out there to write the big checks, so all of us can really take it to the next level and be that huge success that we know is possible. Because we as women, we're the customers. We're saying we need companies and products like the Body Agency, like Joylux. So it's just we got to get the men who write the big checks
Yeah.
to take notice.
Well, I'm a believer in women. I really am. I'm a believer in women funders. I'm a believer in women philanthropists. Maverick Collective, it was all women, all of us. And, Melinda Gates got up and did a TED Talk. And, she's known to be Roman Catholic. She's, conservative. And she got up and did a TED Talk. And her opening line, there was a photograph of Bill Gates that was behind her on the screen. And she said, guess what? I have sex with this man. That was the opening line to her TED Talk. And then she went on about.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, no, it was brilliant. And she went, and she was educated by nuns, right? She's a Roman Catholic. And she went on to say, and because I have sex with this man, I need access to contraception so I can plan my family. And, that of course went viral. And, she's one of the most powerful funders, both in philanthropy and corporate. She makes investments. And, that's one of the reasons I also started Maverick Collective, so that we could emulate the Melindas of this world and make sure that the funding flows. And I also believe that efforts like ours, the nonprofit component and helping others with profits, and that's the model that we use. Like, we give a percentage of our products. We're actually, our holiday campaign is donating period kits to girls in Afghanistan, the first period kits, giving them access to sustainable products. And also girls in Washington, D.C., the same kind of poverty we're also seeing in Washington, D.C. Wow. And limited access to education and products.
In D.C., our capital, that's incredible.
Literally by the capital are very poor areas where it's, there's limited education and access. And we're working to get the data to figure out, well, what's missing. Like, we want to be the stopgap. We want to fill the need of, well, what's missing? Is it education? Like, what is it? Yeah. So I really believe that women are the solution, and us educating men is going to take longer. Yeah. It's going to take longer.
And I can say that we've been, where we are today because of women. Most of our investors are women, or at least the men who have wives that are very pro what we are doing. So it's been wonderful. So with that, Kate, we are on the hour here, and I just want to say I've had such fun talking with you. It was such delight. You are so informative and inspiring, and I just, I could literally keep talking with you, but I know we got to let it go. But thank you, Kate, for joining us. And everybody, please check out The Body Agency, thebodyagency.com. And it's a phenomenal website. And Kate is doing such wonderful things in women's health. So thank you, Kate. Have a wonderful holiday, and I look forward to seeing you in person soon.
Yes, Colette, much love to you. Thank you for being so brave to do what you're doing. We need more of you around the world.
Thank you, dear. Bye-bye.